Greetings, everyone. This is January 12th, 2018. Yes, it's actually 2018. For someone who's been around a while, that seems like science fiction. And so here we are. But what I would like to talk to you about today, it's kind of different. I usually don't go into my own past lives, hardly ever, if ever, but this time I'm going to share a little bit about it with you on one life because it relates to a bigger picture that I think everyone might be interested in, that's listening to this anyway. So to begin, when I lived in Santa Fe, oh gosh, that would have been 2000 to 2004. At night, because I had such trouble going to sleep, I would found that I had started seeing myself in a particular house that seemed very familiar to me, a house I'd never been in this life for sure, up on a cliff overlooking the ocean. And I knew it was in Great Britain somewhere in the UK. I can't say I've never been to the UK, I have, but never seen anything like this. And I knew it was an island. It was island, but it was right off the coast of the main British Isles. So, or the main, actually England, shall we say. So I didn't know where it was, but I felt so at home there that I could visually sit in that window, look out upon the ocean and get calm, and kind of go to sleep in my real-time now Maya lifetime. So this would come to me very often, and I would just enjoy it because it helped me to sleep. So fast forward to probably about 2000 and it could have started, I'm trying to picture it here. Well, it probably was around 2008. And I'm in Kauai. And I started receiving suddenly more information about this lifetime, that it was indeed a lifetime of mine, a past life, as far as I can calculate any such thing. And I just started getting flashes and everything, and I wanted to find this island. So I started looking for it, and I don't remember, I wish I'd kept a log on all of this, how I came to know absolutely in my heart that it was the Isle of Wight off the coast of the UK, right there on the English Channel. So I knew that in that life, my house was positioned so that I was looking across the channel. But I was looking for something, for a ship. I was watching for a ship. And I was watching with excitement, some little bit of trepidation. And, but it was a powerful experience. Gradually, as this whole thing unfolded, I realized that I was a young woman living in the home of my uncle. My parents had died, and I was living with my uncle. I now believe that I was about 12 years old when I came to live with him. My parents died suddenly somewhere else, not on the Isle of Wight, in some other place in the UK. I don't know if they died of the plague, a buggy accident, a fire, I don't know, but they both died together. And I was living in his home. Now, in my younger years there, he was mostly there with me, and there was I think a woman servant or something to take care of me when he wasn't there. But, as I grew older in my later teens, I didn't consider that necessary, and apparently he didn't either. But then, by the age of 18, things started to change. And we started having, my uncle was rarely in this house. He actually had another house elsewhere. But I maintained that house for him. And I maintained it for a purpose. First of all, I loved living on the Isle of Wight. I absolutely loved that place. I've never been there in this life, but I can tell you, I have the total feel of it as if I have, It's one of my other homes. So I was there to accommodate certain situations, though. And often people would show up at my house that were sent by my uncle or brought by my uncle for very special conversations. And among these people was John Dee, Sir Francis Bacon, William de Vere, and some others. There was one woman, I'll get to that a little later, that I recall. This is all from a combination of looking into the Akasha and also some kind of, past life recall that was open to me as I started looking into the Akasha. It's kind of a, a two-way thing. Now, when I am looking at my own past lives, it's not the same as if I'm looking for someone else, because I'm starting to remember. So as I open the book to read a page, so to speak, I go, oh yeah, I remember that. And then what happens is it kind of takes me off into my memory and away from just library research in the Akasha. So then I have a kind of a problem with it, because I can't just get the information I want, because now I'm on a memory track, a past life memory recall track. And so the two kind of wibble wobble between one another. And usually the past life recall kind of blocks some areas of just straight research on that particular era, lifetime, whatever. I'm just explaining why I don't get I get it in a more personal way, I guess I'm trying to say. So anyway, these individuals were meeting in this house. They trusted my uncle. They trusted me, even though I was just this teenage to 20. This went on from the age of 18 to about 25 in my lifetime. That's where I'm seeing this particular scenario set up. And yet I felt that they were nice to me and respectful of me, but I wasn't one of them by any means, and in many occasions they went into another room to talk, and I wasn't invited. But often that was not the case. They talked openly in front of me, and I always wondered why. I mean, I just didn't fit into the scenario. Why would they do that? And then just the other day, because this has come back to me, and I'll explain why in a moment, I realized it was because what they were talking about, they weren't just sitting around and talking philosophy. They had a purpose to be there, and it was an undercover purpose. They came not with their powdered wigs and their fancy outfits and everything. They came incognito, no wigs, regular clothes, very plain clothes. And they didn't want to be known when they were there. I'll get to all that in a minute too. But I wondered, why I was accepted the way I was, even though it was, as an outsider, but nevertheless accepted to some degree. And I realized the other day, it was very, very clear to me, I was then capable of doing what I do now. I don't think I went into past lives and both science and all, quantum physics or anything like that. But I think I was more of a far viewer, a remote viewer. And I could both figuratively and literally tell where certain bodies were buried, so to speak. They needed that information, and on occasion, I was able to supply enough so that they considered me a valuable asset, but an asset, not one of them. So that allowed me to fit into the picture there. But let me tell you the whole story, what was really going on. And that was that underneath this house that sat up on a not a really, really high cliff. I used to think it was, but I realized more and more that my mind was kind of playing tricks on me. It wasn't as high as I thought. It just had such a fantastic view. And it was up, but it wasn't like way, way up. But anyway, I could see out into the ocean. So this house was positioned atop a series of tunnels. And I don't believe those tunnels were dug right then. I think they were previously dug, and then for the purposes of that time period, people came in and reworked those tunnels, made them larger or more, accessible or whatever to the house itself. So you had the house, then you had a very large cellar, and then under the cellar, very secretly, the door secretly hidden, was a door that went down into the tunnels. And one of these tunnels came directly to a natural cave opening where a ship could come, anchor, bring things up on the beach a little bit, and boom, there they were into the tunnel. Now, this cavern or tunnel had been enlarged from some kind of natural, when I say a cave, it wasn't this big cave, but it was a very small, unknown one that was kept secret, and and they used it for this purpose. Now, how this could all go on without the other people on the island knowing about it, that seems kind of improbable, but I just have to tell you what I see. Somehow this was kept secret, or at least maybe a lot of people on the island knew about it and they kept quiet about it for some of the same reasons, that they supported this effort, perhaps. I don't exactly know. I just know that this was kept secret. Certainly the Queen of England did not know about it for sure, because this was during the Elizabethan period. Queen Elizabeth was on the throne. This was toward the end of her reign. Things were getting very complicated. I don't know the historical period that well, but some that people that I've recently talked to, especially one, has given me a lot of information about that period, and it seems to fit really hand in glove with what I received in regard to what was going on in the tunnels and all of this, but I couldn't connect it to the historical narrative because I didn't know it. And now I do, or at least know a lot more about it, and it makes sense. So these people were of, they were of the UK. They were Englishmen born and bred, and normally they would have been loyal to Queen Elizabeth, or they probably had been up to a certain point. But they were fearful of things that were going on at that time, and I'm not going to get into the whole thing about it. But so they were bringing in resources to help people that were in need, that were being cut out of the system, and they were protecting people. They needed funds to do that. Now, there was some alchemy involved, but I also see real funds coming in from other places. So I don't know exactly how that worked, but there's stuff coming in to help people. There were things going out, and the things that were going out were things they wanted to protect. And when we think of the people that were involved, we are thinking about ancient sciences, knowledge, wisdom of the ages that they were wishing to protect. Some of that which passed through those tunnels wound up on Oak Island. I'm pretty sure. Eventually, not right away. And other things went other places, but that's what was going on. There was things coming in, things going out. It was a very dangerous situation. And you would think I would not recall this life pleasantly, but I loved it. Yes, I was fearful for my life on one side of the coin, but just about everybody was in those days for one reason or another in that culture. So it was almost the norm to be fearful for your life. But there was this other sense of excitement, of belonging to a greater purpose, and of sitting and listening to these people talk that had really incredible things to say, even though I wasn't in on all the conversations. I heard enough to enjoy what I was hearing, sort of lap it up. And they were interesting characters too. From my memory of this, from my past life recall, these individuals were not godly saints by any means. They had their desire to help the planet in their own way, to preserve knowledge, to create justice in certain ways, but their idea of justice and our idea of justice, there were some differences because of differences of culture. Theirs was a little more narrow-minded than ours would be, but it was a matter of culture, of time. You have to kind of look at it from that perspective before judging them too critically. So from that perspective, this is what was going on at the time. Now, this segues into some of the other videos that I have embedded on this page, or plan to. And because Francis Bacon and De Vere were involved and some of the others as well, certainly John Dee, and this whole Shakespeare thing. You know, Shakespeare was basically an illiterate person. He didn't do anything. Apparently, De Vere was the author of the Shakespearean text. However, Francis Bacon was very much involved, and I kind of have to wonder. I have a feeling, an Akashic feeling, but I don't have it held down yet so that I can say it for certain, that there was really more than one author to Shakespeare, although De Vere might have been the spearheading one, with Francis Bacon taking up the rear. There was more to it than that. But in any case, the Shakespearean texts held a great deal of knowledge, do hold a great deal of knowledge, more than has been interpreted even up to this time. But there was not only that. There were the Kabbalic texts and things that had to do with the decoding of the Bible. A lot of this they were into. And then there was a lot of information that had been received through psychic or mediumistic means that they considered valid, that they wanted to protect. So there was quite a lot of different material that they were attempting to make sure it survived. But they were also in that house at that time, meeting together to plan things. And I don't know all of the situations, but that's kind of where I came into it, because I could give them information that I could see. This is where this is. This is where that is. I wasn't a fortune teller. I wasn't saying, oh, tomorrow, you know, this is going to happen. But I was giving them information that allowed them to plan better the whole situation. Now, I wasn't the only one that was giving them information. They were getting it from a lot of different people in a lot of different ways. But I happened to be handy because I was in the house. I was trusted. I was the niece of the uncle that obviously was a very trusted person that allowed them to collect there. So it was very handy to have me right there, you know, when they needed me. So all of this is the setup for this. And I did want to just show you a few pictures before I conclude so that you can go on to these other videos. Okay, so this that you're seeing right here is from Google Earth, of course, and this is the Isle of Wight. I just wanted you to get an overall picture of it. Now you see where I have saying here, old lighthouse. And then, well, you can't even see the little circle, but that's something of importance. We're going to switch to another screen now so you can see what I want to show you here. Okay, so here we have the old lighthouse again. And over here we have a little red circle. And that little red circle is where I believe the house to have been that I lived in, my uncle's house. Now, I realized through my Akashic research that it had burned down and there was only some tiny little bit of foundation there. And those years ago in 2008, I believe I found that house. Well, not the house, the location, like there was a close-up picture of just a tiny bit of little foundation sticking up, and they said an old house used to be here. Maybe I was wrong because I didn't say, oh, absolutely, this is it, but I had a strong feeling about it. I cannot find that picture. I can't find a lot of the material that I put together then. I just can't find it. So, but now going back, I found this little area. Now, I don't know if the picture of the house was here or not. If it wasn't, then I'd say it's not the house, because I feel very strongly that this little area in here that I have a tiny red circle around, that is where the house was. And pay attention to where the old lighthouse is, because we're going to talk more about that in just a minute. So I just want to show you a closer up picture of, oops, where are we here? This is the circle. This is the area. Now somewhere in here, I believe, is where the house stood. It was not only, didn't accidentally burn, it was burned on purpose. When my uncle and I had to get out of Dodge, it was no longer safe there. We burned the house, well, not us, but we had it burned. And of course, it wouldn't have been made to look like an accident or whatever. But before then, all the cellar was actually, I believe dirt was brought. I don't know, dirt was brought in or something. It was all sealed in dirt and stuff under there. So you know, and then on top of that, the house was burned. So it was really sealed up. Now, where exactly in here that it was, I don't know, but this is the area that I feel it was located in. Now, if we go to, I want to do the old lighthouse. So you can see the path. Now, the reason I want to talk about the old lighthouse, there's a newer one somewhere else that was never completed, but this is the old lighthouse. And the reason I want to talk about it is you can see here's where the little red circle is, the straight path to the old lighthouse. There was a tunnel that led to it. And under the old lighthouse, something really important is buried. Now, why they would put it there, I don't know. This is still part of a mystery, but it's very important. And that's why it was left there. Very, very important to them at the time. And, you know, I just try to go there, and so far I have not received a clear picture of that. You know, perhaps it will come later, perhaps it's not necessary. But I did want to show you, I'm fascinated with the lighthouse. Ever since I saw it, it was like, here's the higher picture. There's an oratory or something right here, an old oratory, but it's not as old, I don't believe, as the lighthouse. This lighthouse is the second oldest lighthouse in the United Kingdom. The only other one that's older was built by the Romans. And so I want to show you from Google Earth. You can get sort of a down view here. That's what it looks like a rocket ship taking off. So here's a page that has more information on this lighthouse. St. Catherine's Hill is close to the southernmost point of the Isle of Wight. There's a pleasant walk uphill from a car park on the road. Eventually, the track opens out near the top of the hill to reveal an amazing medieval prototype for a skyrocket near the summit. This is in fact St. Catherine's Oratory, known locally as Pepper Pot, a stone lighthouse built in the 14th century by Walter de Godkin or something, I don't know. It is the second oldest lighthouse in the British Isles. Only the Roman-built lighthouse at Dover is older. This man, whose name I can't pronounce, was convicted of scavenging wine belonging to the church from shipwreck. He was ordered to make amends under threat of excommunication by building a lighthouse. Wreck, plunder, lighthouse penance, a rare early example of punishment fitting for the crime of time when theft of a sheep might mean death. Fires were lit in the lighthouse tower to warn ships at sea that they were close to the coastline. There was an attached chapel at one time, hence the oratory, but it has long since demolished. Then a replacement lighthouse was begun in 1785, but never completed. Locally, this half-finished building is known as the salt pot. This is the pepper and the other is the salt. So I feel very strongly. Every time I read about this fellow having to build a lighthouse as penance, I don't believe that story is true. I believe it was a cover story. And I mean, you know, I certainly can't prove that. I can't prove anything that I'm saying here, but I just feel it very strongly that the whole dimension of this lighthouse, the way it was built, the way it was positioned, where it was positioned, the whole thing has to do with these tunnels that were there before the time that my uncle and I were there. And the house was purposely built there. I don't know if it was built by my uncle or in his time or previous to that. maybe way back. I don't know. But I do know that the tunnels were there way back, probably at the time that this lighthouse was built, or maybe just a little bit before the tunnels were built, or maybe longer before. So, big mystery. And why does it really matter? I guess it doesn't anymore, does it? But to some people it may, and I wanted to bring this up. And then it is also a prelude to the other videos that I have posted here. However, before I conclude, I found this picture as being on the Isle of Wight. Can you imagine? Look at this house. And it's supposed to have been, it's an old mill of some kind that's been changed into a house, more recently. So it's a very old structure that's been redone. And there's another one behind it you can see, and oh, it's just so amazing. Look at this. Oh, I love it. I love it. But the reason I'm bringing this picture up is it reminds me of the house on the hill that I lived in. No, it didn't have ivy all over it and pretty yellow windowsills and water running under it or anything like that. Probably more like the one above it there. And it wasn't entirely wood. It had wood to it, but it had a stone foundation at the bottom of it. But there's something about it. I mean, it's just with the trees were all close to it on the sides, not by the windows though, because one had to look out to the ocean, not only for the view, but to see what was going on out there. But there's just something about it that, oh yes, this is my memories of the Isle of Wight. There's something about it and my house and everything. As I said, I have a very romanticized, perhaps, personal feeling about my life there and about the island itself at that time. I was going to mention something about this woman. She's kind of a mystery woman to me, and it just came to me last night, actually, or maybe it was early this morning, that I started seeing her kind of. I couldn't see her exactly, but she had dark hair, very kind woman, but she was obviously a noble woman. But when I would see her, of course, she wasn't wearing jewelry. She had her hair plain clothes. They wanted to look like very ordinary people, not paupers, but ordinary people. So I don't know, I might not even recognize a picture of her all poofed up, and fancy clothes and jewels if I saw one, if indeed there is a picture of her, like a painting or etching or something. But I feel she was certainly important. She wasn't just bringing along the wife kind of thing. They weren't doing that. This was a woman that had savvy and was part of their plan, and intelligent and knowledgeable, well-read, educated, but yet I found her very kind and very generous-hearted, and at least she was to me. The other fellows were nice, polite, and I was useful to them, but I didn't have any strong feelings of attachment to them at all. They had a lot of self-interest involved, and they were very focused, in a way closed-minded, the ones that I recall, on what they were doing and what they wanted to preserve. And it's not that it wasn't a good thing to do. I mean, they had high ideals, but I don't know exactly how to explain it. They weren't very I guess I just can't find a word for it. I can feel it, but it's not there. Like, friendly, smiling. They didn't go out of their way to make a person feel accepted or anything like that. They were just right down the middle with what they had to do and what they wanted to do. Now they could be amusing among themselves. They could say little things, that everyone chuckled at and whatever, but they just weren't extending that to anyone but their closed little clutch there, But she was different, and so was this young man who was also a nobleman, but he was, much younger than the rest of them, and he was friendly and outgoing. We had some talks together, as I did with the woman. Now, the pirate, he was actually a privateer. As I mentioned, we had sort of a little, very proper, romantic feeling for one another, and he was a whole different. He never met these other people. He came in of his own accord when the timing was right. And we sat by the fire and talked and, shared stories. And he'd tell me some exciting adventures that I love to hear, and all of that. He was not a rough pirate. He was a privateer, and he had an education, and he was not a nobleman, but he, had finesse. And yet he was a very warm and extended, loving person. That's why I guess I fell for him. So anyway, those are my memories. And what I'm going to share with you next has to do with the whole Shakespearean thing. And I just found it very fascinating. And I believe this was very much a part of what we were planning, looking at, where the things were hidden, where we were intending to hide them. I say they were intending to hide them, and that sort of thing. Because not all of them left through the tunnels. Some of them stayed in the UK, like whatever was under the lighthouse, the old lighthouse, and whatever is inside the altar where Shakespeare is buried. Shakespeare is buried, which you will see in this video that I have embedded here. So the intrigue continues, and for those of you who love historical mystery, and it has to do with things of spirit and light, because these fellows, I'm not putting them down. They had high integrity. It's just that they were the way they were. And I guess as a young girl, I wanted to be accepted more, maybe. I don't know. But the point is, things were as they were, and they did a lot of good in their way at that time with the insights they were able to have in that cultural period. So I will close here and let you get on to the other videos.